You're driving your Jeep and someone comes up from behind and says, "Hey, your brake light's not working." Well, what do? Well, first you check the obvious. You make sure your headlight switch is in the proper position, and then you check your bulb and make sure it's not burned out. If those two things are in order, then most likely it's that little switch on your master cylinder that controls your brake light circuit. That switch is prone to fail. So, Jeep Talk has decided to take one apart and see just what the heck is going on inside of those things. So if you want to know more about brake light switches, stay tuned.
This is Jeep Talk.
And this is that switch. It's a very common switch used in all World War II Jeeps and some military trucks, as well as post-war up into probably the 70s. So it's a proven design. However, in my experience, it seems that they tend to fail. So we wanted to find out exactly what was going on inside. So we decided to take it apart. And it has this crimped on ring here that holds this whole assembly in. So we took a saw and we cut this ring off, but then it still wouldn't come apart. So we wound up slicing through these little grooves here all the way through so that we could spread this housing. And then it was able to separate. So after doing that, this is what we have. This is the case, and you can see it's been cut and spread. So here's how it works. Your fluid from your master cylinder goes through here, and this in turn pushes on this diaphragm. Okay, so then you have a copper disc behind the diaphragm, and that is pushed forward against this little spring, and that pushes on these two contacts here like this, completing the circuit, and that allows your light to work. So after taking this one apart that had failed, it was on this Jeep, probably had less than 500 miles on it, and it failed, and it was brand new. So upon taking it apart, all of this surface on this disc and these two pins here was covered in a black sooty material. Not sure what it is. I suspect it may have been carbon from the arcing every time it connected and disconnected, which is unusual in my mind because the current draw, especially on a Jeep where it really only works one light, has to be well within the limit of this set of contacts here. However, that's what was happening. Loss of soot prevented the connection to be made. So I took a wire wheel actually to clean this surface and these two pins here just to see if the metal itself was corroded. And as you can see, the metal looks pretty good. So it just built up a layer of some sort of insulating material. And unfortunately, it meant that the switch failed. You can't repair these. They're throwaway items. That's the bad news. But the good news is they're not very expensive. The only problem is if you buy a new one and you put it in, you may discover that it will fail. I've had some last for years. Some last only a few months. So it's anybody's guess. I don't know how many different manufacturers there are of these. Some are probably better than others. But anyway, that's the story on the brake light switch. So there you have it. The brake light switch in detail. If you never knew what was going on inside before, you do now. For Jeep Talk, I'm Damon.